Welcome, BBCs, to episode number 240 of the Broken by Concept podcast, the number one League of Legends solo queue educational and motivational podcast. We are continuing our mini-series of the BBC Dictionary. Charles wants this to be a 6-part mini-series, so that's why I call it a mini-series. I love it, mini-series. So let's continue on. We did mostly in-game terminology that we used last episode. Now we're going to be going more out of game, bigger picture stuff. This is really stuff that a lot of these terminology we came up with, Curtis and I, in the first 50 or so episodes of this podcast, naturally just from our coaching, because we need to find terms for these things to explain them, right? So let's start off. I'm just going to go crazy here with the order.
I like that.
Process. Let's do process.
Big one.
What do we mean by process? Because what we see in the comments a lot of the time is, what is process? What does that mean? Let's try and define this for our listeners. What do we mean by process? Who wants to start?
Well, there's the process.
The process.
The process.
I guess it's more specific. The process. Like, what's the BBC process?
Okay. Well, let's start at a high level. You know, something that we've learnt over the years, and we actually noticed this back in the day in starting probably in 2017.
Our esports days.
Our esports days, where basically, long story short, Jono, we've had two episodes with Jonathan Brown, came in. He looked at us in there. We had a gaming house at the time, and he's like, "Are you guys have any kind of training structure? Do you have any idea why you're playing that many games? Do you review your games? Do you know how to review your games? How do you learn from a game?" And he started asking all these questions.
And we had no answers to any of the questions.
And we were just like, "Mate, get out of the room, old man. You don't know what you're talking about. We know we're the high elo players. We know how to play League of Legends." And, over time, our defenses lowered and our egos lowered. And we're like, okay, well, he probably has a point. Why are we not reviewing these games properly? How could we get more learning from our time playing the game? We're sitting here doing 9 scrims a day. How do we make sure we're getting bang for buck value from every little bit of time we spend in this video game? That's, I think, where it started. Yeah. That's where it spawned, the idea. And then basically over the years, we're like, okay, well, when we got into solo queue coaching, how do we go about basically getting the most value from our time on the computer? That's really it.
We had a process in the early days of League of Legends and esports. It was just play 10 games a day. You get some people organized together to do some scrims. You play those 3 scrims. You talk a little bit about the draft or what should have happened.
Yeah.
And then that's it. And we just keep doing that process again and again. That was the process.
That was the process.
Yeah, it was just trying to building the plane as you fly it kind of mindset.
But it was also stemming from being inspired from Korea, right? The mindset back in the day from, in Korea was they play a ridiculous amount of games, right? They play 20 games of solo queue a day, and they play all night. And, you look at the best players, they're spamming games. So the whole mindset was, if Korea are the best players and that have the best players in the world, why can't we do that? So no one even questioned there could be a better way to go about it. And if you even brought it up, people were like, well, what do you mean? Korea have the best players in the world.
That's right.
So what are you talking about?
No one taught us how to do it either. We were all just kind of trying to figure it out off watching esports documentaries or just kind of assuming what to do. It's it just makes sense that we'll play a handful of games maybe until we're tired and then take a break, do it again. And we thought we were working very hard because we played a lot of games. We actually played more games in that period in Australia than other regions did. We played 10 games. We played from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Our scrim schedule,
Crazy schedule.
3 sets of scrims, about 3 games each.
So I guess extending on this idea, we basically slowly realized that if we actually are more intentional about the intensity coming into the games, we have more energy, and we really coming in with do we have something we're trying to improve on? And also, is there somewhere we can direct our attention in the post game to really consolidate that learning? So I guess the process with where we've ended up now, which is, I guess 3 blocking, which we'll cover in a second, and having a more thoughtful approach to the way you're going about your league journey. That's kind of where we're at now. That all started back in 2017. So I guess in a long-winded way, the way you would define the process is you're kind of being intentional. It's an intentional way of conducting your League of Legends learning experience.
Yeah.
And that can differ for any. You can have your own process, but as long as you like, this is what I'm testing, this is my process, and these are the results. So then you can actually figure out how to improve. Because if you're just throwing shit at a wall, eventually it sticks. That was our mindset approach. You don't really know what's working and what's not.
And the way I view it is that imagine that you've got dials on a wall. One of the dials is repetitions. What's the perfect amount of repetitions for me based off my schedule? Okay, I can't afford to play all night because I got to wake up in the morning to go to a job, or I got to spend time with my partner, or I got to drop the kids off, or whatever the hell it is. It's like, okay, I've got this amount of time. What's the best amount of games that works for me based off my energy levels? You have that dial. You have the dial of what should my reviews look like based off the amount of time I'm able to put into the game. How many days of the week should I play based off my weekly schedule? We've got all these dials, and it's up to you to play around with these dials to figure out what process gives you the most intensity, gives you the most bang for buck value in terms of learning, and gives you the most satisfaction without burning yourself out.
Yeah, the fun aspect's important
exactly
as well.
Right.
I think something important to bring up here, Nathan, is I don't know which one of you guys talked about this first, but it's not on our list, but it links to this, is a fake process. I always hear you guys talking about a fake process.
Yeah.
Like, what would you describe as a fake process?
A fake process would be...
Like what are signs that someone's
signs
process
someone has a
might
fake
be fake?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think Nathan is probably best to answer this one.
Well, a fake process is sort of like you're taking steps. Let's say, for example, you're playing 3 blocks, you're reviewing, but you're not actually doing it. You're not approaching it with intensity, curiosity.
I would say that, like, optically, you could be sitting at your desk playing the games and doing the reviews, but you're not coming at it with the right mindset. You actually need to have a growth mindset towards your reviews, and underlying an actual process is the idea that you can take accountability. So if you're just reviewing, but you're looking at your teammates' mistakes, you're taking the same steps as someone with a process.
I'll give you a real life example of a fake process.
Yeah.
Is when a teacher gives you homework, and like you got to go and then you get home, you go into your room, and you have like this thing in front of you, and you're like, okay, and like you get told to study or something, and you got to read this book. You can flick through the pages and read it, but you're not really engaged with the writing. So you come out of it an hour later, and optically it looks like you've been in your room studying and reading this book, but in reality you've actually got no value because you're not actually studying. Studying is you're actually trying to engage with the material and learn. Fake process is the same, where it's like you can open up a VOD, you can skim through it and check a few shit out and play 3 games, but if you're not engaged with those games, or you're not engaged with the post-game review, you're not really getting much from it. So that, yes, you're optically, like you said, Charles, it looks like you're doing a process, but it's actually not real.
You could even say out loud as you're reviewing, like, oh, I took a bad trade here and that's why I died. But deep in your mind, you could be thinking, like, oh, if my jungler just came, I'd be fine.
Yeah.
So, that's
true.
seriously bad.
One.
You can convince yourself you're doing the right things very easily as well, I find, with some of my students. They convince themselves they're doing the right thing. Like, yeah, I'm showing up, I'm doing the reviews, but they're just not approaching it with that, let's...
And this is actually something, I do want to talk about this.
That needs to go in the dictionary, that noise Nathan just made.
Well, something we've actually experienced in our programs is people actually coming in with the intention to prove the process doesn't work.
Yes.
So believe it or not,
That's
we
so
have
true.
people that we've worked with that they say like it's out of kind of like I don't know where it comes from. Maybe like resentment or whatever the hell it is. It's like they're angry that they can't play the game and win via natural talent. So it's like
I think there's so many reasons.
there's so many reasons. We don't even need to get into the reasons, but basically there does exist a thing where they're coming in with the intention to follow the process in a toxic fake manner, whereby they can prove that, look, I've played 3 blocks, I've got a small champion pool, and I'm reviewing my desk, and yet I'm still at the same elo bracket. And basically it's a way of blaming the system and making them feel better about...
They sort of justify why they can't climb.
Exactly right.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Exactly right. And it's kind of out of anger or frustration. And
And
that
laziness as well.
Yeah, it's
and
the
laziness.
easy thing to do. It's like, oh, thank God. Like, These guys here,
Yeah.
they actually don't know.
They
what they're
want
talking
us to
about.
turn around and say, you're special.
Correct.
It doesn't work. It just doesn't work for you, buddy. It's
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
But, and that's what they want. They want that pat in the back to say, you were right. The system is wrong. And you were right all along.
Losers queue exists.
Losers queue exists and you're in it, right? For some reason, they targeted your user ID and you're done. And so, that's what they want. They want that pat in the back. And we can sense that now. We can actually, over time, me and Nathan, because we've had a little bit more experience than Charles, we've had probably seen this a little bit more. It's not super common, but there are signs. There are telltale signs.
Yeah. All right, so you got process there, which can be very loosely defined about what that looks like for you, how many games you play, all that. So now let's go into the more specifics here around things that we talk about that are good to have in your process and improving at League of Legends, such as 3-block, the end of review process, champ pool cycling, learning objectives, the stage 1 to 4, that's the BBC pyramid.
I think we start with 3 blocks, Nathan.
3 blocks.
So do you want to get into this one, Nathan?
So similarly to when we started to think about our improvement with League, 3 blocks basically came to how we got there was, okay, how many games of League of Legends can you play with high intensity, with maximum amount of focus? It's very easy to play League on autopilot. It's very easy to play games with low intensity. And we found that the really good average number is 3 games. Playing one session, 3 games is a great time
general
to play League at your best or close to your best.
And where that actually came from specifically, there was I think Jono shared with us, there was some sort of scientific, there was a study. It basically said that, you can have deep focus for X amount of time.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, how does that line up with how long a
I think it was like
game
an
is?
hour and a half or 2 hours.
Whatever the
like
hell
that.
it might
Yeah.
be, 90 minutes, 60 minutes. I'm like, you know what? I think a 3-block based off our experience, based off the little breaks in between, queuing up again. 3-block is like that perfect little number that for the most part, most people can kind of gel with and click with. And it seemed to really work.
Yep. I mean, we've got so many people who have had success with 3 blocks through watching the podcast and through our programs. The other benefit as well of 3 block in is it's a cutoff. You have to stop after that. To either take a break or you play the next day. So this prevents tilt streaks. This is the biggest thing that helps people. It's like, okay, I'm committing to myself in the process. I'm going to sit down and play a 3 block. If I go 0-3, I stop. If I go 3-0, I stop. If I go 1 and 2 and stop. And it's sort of a mechanism to automatically discipline yourself from, I want to get back the LP that I just lost.
It's also it's a counter argument to what most people do, which is the common gaming thing is I'll just play until I win or I'll play until I lose, which is how a lot of people play, right?
That's the gambling, the
yeah,
casino.
exactly. They just like, oh, I'm winning, I'll just play until I lose. Or I'm on a loss streak, I'll just play until I win, then I'll get off the computer.
And I guess we need to think, what is a healthy relationship with League? That's something we talk a lot about.
Yeah.
I think this ties in with this one. I think we might as well talk about it. We found that 3 blocking is kind of a great way to develop a healthier relationship with League, and a healthy relationship with League meaning you're not really acting in a degenerate way, right?
You respect the game. You're playing with intensity.
It's not impacting your life in a negative way. You're not addicted. You're not foregoing other activities in your life that you should be doing, whether it be chores or attending a job or study or whatever the hell it might be, and such that you can actually enjoy your time on the Rift, get good quality learnings, and actually develop a long-term, better relationship with your time.
Yeah, because
with the game.
3 blocks actually fit in your schedule. That's the idea.
You can schedule it in.
You don't randomly 3 block. You actually fit it in the schedule. There's also a psychological aspect with 3 block. I feel like a lot of my students at the moment, it's like they don't play League, they play 3 blocks. You know what I mean? It's like a completely different mindset to being at the computer. It's like I'm not just here to play video games now. I'm here to play my 3 block and get my learnings. You know what I mean? So there is that psychological aspect going into it.
But it's so fascinating because this exists in nearly every other endeavor. You don't just say, I'm going to go to the gym and go there until I die.
Yeah.
Or until I feel like I get injured or something.
You have a set amount of exercises you do.
I have a set amount of exercises. I'm going to do these exercises for these rep ranges and then I'm going to go home.
Yep.
I'm going to go for 45 minutes or whatever the hell it might be.
Well, the reason why it doesn't exist in League, Curtis, because you can sit down, you don't have the physical aspect of it, right? So you can
Gym's
play.
probably not a great great example
Yeah,
of that.
you can play forever, dude.
But
you know?
I would say study though is one of those things, right? Like we tend to like block study time. It's like I'm going to study these things. It's rare that you're like I'm going to study till my eyes fall out of my sockets. Or
But
something.
some people
but
do,
again,
yeah,
that's-
I guess some people do.
But that's easier to do as well because studying is something you don't want to do. A lot of people, I assume. So
Yeah, that's a
League
good
is
point because you can't
gaming-
study and then halfully through your study
True.
block, I'm
I'm enjoying
just
it
gonna
so
fun
much.
study now.
Yeah.
Or like if I'm practicing piano halfway through my piano practice, I can't be like, oh, I'm just gonna auto
That's
part
a
some
good
piano
point.
now.
League is that unique kind of because it's
Yeah.
like, it's a hobby. It's something you really want to do.
Correct.
Yeah,
And you
that's a
can
good
just
point.
you can change your mindset to how you're viewing the game in like a snap second.
True.
You know?
and there's that element of the LP, right? The plus and the minus. There's you
Yeah,
want
you don't block your
it's the
you're down at the
gambling.
casino, you know?
Yeah.
True.
If you're on pokies, you don't play a pokies block, you know?
Yeah, to go down for a poker spot
yeah.
or a roulette block.
maybe
Yeah.
professional people do.
It's not a bad idea.
Poker with poker. Maybe.
Let us know, anyone who's
And that's not to say league and climbing ranked is it's a casino. No, but people can view it that way, and then
And
you're
that's
not
what
getting
an
the
unhealthy
details.
relationship
Yes.
with League looks like. You're
That's
viewing
right.
it like a casino. I'm going to go in. If I get the good teammates, I
Yeah.
win.
Yeah.
Or
I
if
hope- I hope I get the good
Or I
teammates.
just hope that I play well today, or
Yeah.
whatever the hell it might
you're at
be.
a good table. Yep.
Yeah. And then I get my LP, and if I get the bad teammates, or I get the bad jungler, I lose the game. You know, that's that degenerate
Yes.
type unhealthy
That's not real.
relationship. Yeah.
Okay, let's now move into the end of review process, part of the process. This is something that I came up with quite early on in my jungle coaching journey back in 2020. And it really just happened quite naturally because junglers are extremely good at ruining games by simply ganking. There's no other role in the game that can influence so negatively other roles than a jungler. The classic example, is ganking, let's say, two full HP people. I've got like a half HP Nami and a Twitch or whatever. I get counter gangs. We get triple kill. My teammates lose 2 waves. That is massive amount of gold advantage you've given. And when you make a mistake like that, again, it's not to say the game is over, but the end of review process is such an important part as well for developing a healthy relationship with the game, because you're not confused about why I lost this game or why this game was so hard, why the enemy teammates got fed. And this is so important as well and it is for all roles, because you need to respect the snowball nature of League of Legends. And a lot of people don't. A lot of people think that they can just get away, can just play very averagely in the early game, the mid game, and they can have insane mid game macro or team fights, and they will win a game. That's not how people climb in solo queue most of the time. And it's just not reality.
So one thing I want to tag on here, the reason the end of review process is pretty genius is because basically what it's doing is you're saying, okay, I've made this really bad error, and the way I view it is like a decision tree.
Yeah.
I'm now in this alternate reality where everything is going to be chaotic.
It's a different
stressful,
game. Different universe.
Well, different universe, but let's just describe what that universe looks like. This different universe looks like I have less options. The game is incredibly complicated. It's
the
not
game's
as structured.
easier for the enemy team.
Very easy for the enemy team, and you have to bend over backwards to even get a chance at winning the game a lot of the time. So it's, again, not to say that you can't dig yourself out of that alternate reality, but nonetheless, you're in that kind of alternate reality. You're stuck there, and so there's no going back because of the snowball nature of the game a lot of the time. So rather than trying to problem solve these incredibly complicated problems, moving into the mid game, let's like, why is the game so hard? And that's, if you get very, very good at preventing yourself from going down that rabbit hole, I guess the quality of reviews gets easier. Your games get more consistent.
The way you talk and think about the game becomes clearer.
Yeah, everything's
Yes.
more efficient as
It
well.
helps your relationship with the game as well. Yeah, everything exactly right.
So what constitutes an end of review mistake? What are some factors you look for when you end a review?
And
And is it hard? Is it something that you like? At what level would you expect someone to be able to notice an end of review mistake?
So the most simply put is just that normal example. It's like, okay, I gave the enemy team so much golden experience in here. Again, the game's just way easier for them. Other examples, actually, end of review, especially the higher elo you go, it's about missed opportunities. That's end of reviews. A lot of the time in my game, I think about the alternative universe. I missed that dive. They would have lost 2 waves, and the game would have looked differently that way. So it's really just playing out these different universes in your mind and then thinking, okay, well, there's not really much point looking past that, because if I did that and this is the basic consistent principles that I could have followed to do that, then my games will start to become much simpler.
Interesting, because so embedded in that is the idea that you're comfortable taking one learning per game. You are. You're
That's
comfortable.
right,
You're
yes.
comfortable just
Yeah.
learning that one thing
Yep.
and then moving on. That's
Yep.
really powerful because people do these complex reviews.
They're
dude.
so complex, yeah.
People try and problem solve every moment, like every team fight, every skirmish, every deploy. But you're just saying, oh, this one thing could have changed the game. I'm happy to walk away knowing that if I did that differently, the game could have looked different.
So I
Exactly
actually kind of, to answer, I would have answered your question, Charles, very differently. I don't view end of review as a singular like moment for the player. For the coach, it is.
Yeah.
So so the way imagine you got two lenses. A coach has enough, in Nathan's case, has enough understanding of the game to be able to clearly identify what that quote unquote end of review moment is, because Nathan knows. You've missed that opportunity, and Nathan can play out that timeline of how that's going to affect the future consequences, right? How the game's going to play out. But a player doesn't have that foresight. So the way I actually view end of review, it's a mindset. End of review is a mindset for
more
the
mindset,
player.
yeah.
It's a practical tool for the coach. It's a mindset for the player. And so for the player, what they need to understand is, okay, you know what? I this game feels off. It does feel really difficult. Maybe it's hard for me to really fully understand what the end of review moment is, but I know that I don't want to over review these complicated moments in mid game. I've probably made a pretty big mistake somewhere else. So it's the mindset that's helping direct their attention in a review. And it helps narrow down where they're going to be probably directing their attention. And it helps manage expectations and all that stuff. They probably think, oh yeah, I probably did make an end of review mistake somewhere. I've got to figure it out. I think it's more of a mindset.
That's a good point. I mean, I find myself often in reviews, especially when I'm coaching new clients. Like, I'll identify an end of review moment, but I'll still keep reviewing. It's more, like you said, it's like a mindset. It's like, oh, this was huge. Really emphasize its importance. That being said, we can still have a look at what happens later, because oftentimes, especially in like below Emerald games, there are comebacks, right? Like it's not really, and the end of review doesn't mean the game's over. I think that's a very important caveat to make. You should still play to win. Don't have that end of review moment in the game and then lose your marbles.
Well,
and then in the game.
because people just think it's like, oh, Nathan's just telling me I'm making the end of review mistake. Well, there's end of review mistakes happening from everyone.
Correct.
Every single one of your teammates. The enemy team's gonna have a bunch more end of review moments in the timeline. People overstay. People completely misplay fights. There's gonna be lots of end of reviews.
Yep.
But the way you want to view it is that when you make that end of review mistake, you're now in the capitalizing on enemies' mistakes mindset. That's what's happened. You've entered now that territory where the game's not necessarily dictated by me. It's dictated by them making an error. And chances are they are going to make an error, right? But that doesn't undo the fact that, you could have lost the game very easily.
Yeah.
And by the way, an error and an end of review are still different as well, because
Yes.
end of review is when it's just the timeline of the game is just so different. An error is just like, oh, I misplayed that fight a little bit. We traded for 2 for 2. Not the end of the world. Like, the game hasn't exploded. The enemy team didn't get any objective off.
I can also just die after crashing my wave, and that's not end of review.
Yeah.
Even though I've died for 0.
A lot of
Like,
the
if I
time.
hold my sums, if I
Yep.
don't miss too many farm, I know, like, again, that's hard for a player to figure out, but you can kind of brush off
Like I
certain
said,
things.
it's more of a
Correct.
mindset.
Yeah, you're right. All right, it's a hard one. We could talk about that a lot.
We could
I
talk about
think,
that
but
forever,
let's,
yeah.
Yeah, I've got some more things up, but I will say that for another episode.
All right, let's do now stage 1 to 4, the BBC pyramid.
Look, I really don't think we need to go too deep on this one. We have a whole
There's a
episode.
whole episode.
We just link the episode.
Yeah, I think what we do, if you're confused about stage 1 to 4, we'll link the episode. Hopefully, if Charles is not lazy, he can have a pop up. That would be super awesome. But
Literally on YouTube.
Timestamp it. What part of the episode are we at?
I don't know. I'm not Streamlabbing this.
Okay.
Let's.
But yeah, we'll link it in the description 100%. Okay.
Yep, and I'll just say link, and also, literally just on YouTube, guys. Literally type in BBC pyramid, and it will be there. And it literally
Yeah,
has
it's like a
this
little
pyramid.
nice little Illuminati-looking triangle in the thumbnail, I'm pretty sure.
That's right. So we'll skip over that.
There you go.
All right, next one here. A learning objective. What is a learning objective?
I think that's a Morganism.
Just very simply, it's something that you're directing your attention to, whether it be in game or out of game, to basically narrow in your focus. Because in League, there are obviously many things that you could focus on in your games or in your post game review, whereby it can be overwhelming. Do I look at my deaths? Do I look at these neutral objectives? Do I look at the team fights? Do I look at the mid game? What do I look at? Learning objective basically narrows it down so you can pick maybe 1 or 2 things you can look at. And I think the only important thing to mention here is really in and out of game learning objectives. And this is, I think, one of the biggest breakthroughs we've had as coaches is getting specific. What is this learning objective? Is it an in-game or an out-of-game? And if you hear basically any coach in the world using learning objectives in terms of in-game and out-of-game, you can basically guarantee that they're a BBC listener or they've been a coach in our program because we literally innovated this, right? So the way you want to think about it is that in-game, as we mentioned in this podcast, the previous episode, mental stack is very valuable. So you very, very rarely want to be very careful about setting in-game learning objectives because you don't want to overwhelm the client's mental stack.
And think about it as like training every muscle in the gym. You know, in terms of like in like one session, you want to focus on like one muscle so you can build it into muscle memory. So then it's like, okay, now I can focus on the next thing. You need to like constantly repeat that. Like say, for example, most common one that I said is just jungle tracking. Let's just focus on the jungle tracking. When the enemy jungler shows on the map for the first time in the game, let's figure out exactly what their camps they've done. And
another example of an in-game learning objective is being aware of what the next neutral objective is and communicating intent. Boom. You can have that as like your sole in-game learning objective. That's it. And typically in-game learning objectives, there only need to be one of them. Out of game, you can have maybe a little bit more. You can have sometimes 2, sometimes 3, depending on how simple they are or complex. It can be even 1. But either way, out of game, you can be a little bit more liberal with the amount of them you have because we're not impeding our mental stack.
Yeah, I give a lot. You go.
For the in-game, a lot of it would be ability usage and how to play fights with your champion, especially people that just started picking up a champion. I mean, to be honest, even people that have played the champion for a lot of the time, sometimes have really bad habits with the way they use abilities. It's a very common one that I said as well.
Yeah, I find myself setting way more out-of-game ones nowadays.
Yep,
Even with something like ability usage, I would probably more likely, from an AD carry perspective, set that as an out-of-game review.
Me too.
I would say, like, just a common example one is, like, every game you play, open up the review and look at how you were positioning on your level up timer at level 2. Just specifically, get super granular. That's a learning objective as an out-of-game, even though we're reviewing an in-game concept.
Yeah. So let's just go back to the in-game, out-of-game. So in-game is literally as you're playing the game is what you're focusing on. Out of game is like what you're looking at in your review.
Yeah, it's all about what are you working on, but it's like where do you work on it? Do you work on it during your lull states in the game, or do you work on it in the review out of the game?
And this is where you can. So ability usage can be an in-game and it can be an out-of-game. I'm more with Charles. I very rarely set in-game learning objectives relating to ability usage, although you can. I have done that where I'm like, I want you to really focus on your Echo W usage and make sure you're using it off cooldown. I've done this
myself, by the way. When I was learning Jinx, I actually prime myself before team fights. Just use your goddamn E. Press E, and just like you can do it in the game.
Exactly. So, but you gotta be more careful though.
Yeah, because I said a lot of in-game ability usage now. Like, let's say you've got an ult, Hecarim ult. I want you to think about who you're ulting in the game.
That's good. That's a lull state thing.
That's a lull state.
That's fine because you're not telling them to do something.
And on junglers, you could probably get away with more in-game learning objective ability usage stuff than a laner. Right, because again, your mental stack, you've got way more lull states, you've got way more downtime. You're not just because you're impeding your mental stack, you can get away with impeding your mental stack a little bit more as a jungler.
You can.
So there's differences there role as well.
I would so much rather have someone like review their Caitlyn net usage than think every time they use a Caitlyn net and overthink it in the game.
Because that's exactly how I like to review my own games. If I'm working on my, let's say, my Talia R usage, I would never have that as an in-game learning objective. I'm just going to review each and every single one of my Rs and understand why I used it the way I did, how I should have used it, and how I could check what would I do next time.
Yeah, and then that will bleed into your next game.
Exactly right.
This is what you have to trust. That's more about trusting the process and just believing in a growth mindset. Is the more you review how you do things, the better you will naturally become at doing them. Yep.
Exactly right.
All right, let's do champ pool cycling.
Okay.
So the first thing to establish is that from Curtis and I's, and I'm going to group you into it, Charlie, because you weren't here for the first 100 and something episodes, or you were here a little bit.
I was lurking.
We believe that for most people, one trick in is not the best way to learn and play League of Legends. It's not that, it's very theoretical. Only certain type of players can just flat out one trick and climb. It takes a certain type of player. People need to, as Charles says, feel fresh.
Yeah.
What's that terminology?
Got to keep it fresh.
You got to keep it fresh, right? So champ pool cycle is basically still taking elements of one trick. So you play a lot of one champion.
I mean, I was doing this naturally, right? Even during the first 100 episodes. I would pick a new pool.
Champion.
I would spam a champ for 100 games and switch. I used to think it was bad, but it was actually really good. It got me so many results.
It did. You'd have a lot of knowledge about the game, 100%, right?
Yeah.
You can play a lot of different roles to a pretty high level.
Oh yeah, I've cycled through everything in the last decade. I'm a cyclist. What do you want to? What's that race?
Champ pool cyclist.
Yeah, I'm champ pool cyclist. Yeah, Tour de France. That's what I'm going to say.
Tour de Rift.
Tour de Rift. Love it.
So yeah, champ pool cycling is basically having. So how many champs you can have in a pool you'd establish. So again, you're not gonna just have one because you're not a one trick. So either 2 or 3 or 4. I guess it depends on your rank. The higher
Depends on
rank
the
you go.
complexity of the champions.
Depends on
as
the
well.
complexity of the champ. But for let's say the most common, like a really basic example, let's say I have Graves and Shyvana. Those are the 2 champs that I'm focusing on. I'm mainly working on Graves, and I'll just weave in Shyvana here and now. I'm going to play a little bit 2 champions, and then those are 2 champs that I switch between my pool. And then, okay, let's say for example, I want to learn a new champion. I don't completely remove both Graves and Shyvana. I keep one and I remove one, and then I've got Graves and let's say Kha'Zix. And then now I decide, okay, I play lots of Kha'Zix. I want to drop Graves, and then I want to add back in maybe Shyvana again or whatever. So you can sort of just play around with it, but that's the idea with champ pool cycling is you're committing to a champ pool and you're cycling champions in and out. Is there anything else you would add to that?
I would just say it's a really healthy way of champ hopping. Like, you don't want to champ hop too prematurely.
Yes.
You actually want to give each champion some time.
What time? I reckon 30 to 45 games minimum, or you think more?
Depends on the complexity of the champion. If it was
I
something...
think people need to use some common sense
Yeah,
here as
so I
well.
think
I don't want to
common
be
sense,
that
man.
person
No,
that says you got to play this amount of games. Like, just
I feel
know.
so uncomfortable when
I feel
people
very
ask
uncomfortable
me.
as well. It's like you don't want to. You're not going to be able to tell whether or not you click with that champ in 10, 20 games a lot of the time. It's going to take 30 to 40 at minimum.
And if you hate it, bail out.
Yes, if you hate it.
But if you find yourself bailing out constantly, then
That's
that's,
a
an
problem.
issue. That's a red
Yeah.
flag. So yeah, like Curtis said,
you need some common sense.
Common sense.
But it's a good tool to have in your process. So then you're not losing your mind playing one champion forever. And you're also just developing just a wider view of the game and, the strengths and weaknesses of other champions.
Yep.
All right, let's go on to 20%ers now. We talk about that a lot. So 20%ers is what most people should be working on below Emerald,
Maybe below plat.
below Plat. And these are like massive things tying to the end of review. It's like these are just really massive mistakes you're making.
I
That-
don't
that are
even
very
think they're necessarily mistakes sometimes. I think they're just, you're missing a
Concepts.
concept.
They're concepts.
You don't understand
League is a game
concept.
of concepts, exactly. And there are certain concepts that will contribute a lot to the way a game plays out, and other concepts will be, very minimal. We call them 1%ers, right? Or 0.1%ers.
Yeah.
The higher you get, the more significant those 0.1%ers get because you've drained typically all of the other major 20%ers, right? So an example of a 20%er can be things like, I'm assuming as a jungler, Nathan, like seeing where the enemy jungle starts, like jungle tracking. Like that's a 20%er. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, like them showing on the map, like just jungle tracking in general, thinking about where they're going to be going
That's
at a base.
That's going to alter many of your
scenarios,
decisions across many games. And as a laner, as a mid laner, an example of a 20%er would be, warding and leaning or jungle tracking first clear. That's a really, really
Just knowing that it exists.
Yeah.
Knowing that you can jungle track the first clear.
that's huge because if you're not dying to a level 3 gank or a level 4 gank, your games are going to be completely different.
Yeah. And just to be clear, they're not actually 20%ers. That would imply that there are only 5 of them. There's a lot more than 5. But yeah, and they can be really, really high level things, like just understanding that when you reset, you don't want to miss creeps. And then another more accurate one could be something like trading around cooldowns. The idea that if the enemies are wasting their spells on the wave, that gives you a window to trade. And I think just to give you guys some props here, this is where your coaching does differ from other coaches. When I first started talking to you guys about solo queue coaching, it's like a lot of coaches focus on the 1%ers and they really skip over the 20%ers and they have a lot of assumed knowledge. But that whole idea of this person that I'm coaching right now might just be missing some very big things. And if I just inform them of these things and then send them on their way to experiment with them, they're going to get way more results than if I
the 1%ers.
get into the weeds of the 3-wave crash or get into the weeds of even ability usage. A lot of 20%ers should be mentioned very, very early on in someone's coaching journey. So yeah, I think it's something you guys do really well.
Yeah, these are things that change the massive outcome of the game, and you got to get these down first. Otherwise, you're just not playing League of Legends.
Yeah, and cut the bullshit with this stuff as well. Sometimes you just got to call a spade a spade. If someone's just viewing the game in this really just bad way and they're just clearly missing things, just address it,
All right, another term we've got here. We had the micro-macro framework.
Look, I think that this one is a really good, solid. For anyone looking to get into reviews, micro-macro framework is probably my go-to framework. Very simply, if anyone's out there watching and they want to get into reviews, start by reviewing an error. It could be whatever you're reviewing. It could be you dying to a gank. It could be you reviewing a team fight. It could be reviewing anything, really. You look at it first with the micro lens. You look at your ability usage. You look at your target selection. You look at your positioning. You're looking at the fighting itself. Then you go, okay, there might be some observations there. Then you zoom out and say, okay, from a macro perspective, if I zoom out, should I even really be here? Why am I at this fight? Was this even a good fight to take in the first place? Why is my wave even in this location? These are sorts of the bigger picture questions. You're zooming in and then you're zooming out. And the reason we zoom in first is because if there were big findings in the micro department, well, then it's typically not a macro, right, problem, because if you can just play it better mechanically and you can win the fight, then we don't even really need to get too much into the macro because it means it's an okay play. So this is a really good kind of baseline framework that anyone can use to really simplify, their review process.
I like that way of you putting it. It's like the zoom in and then zoom out. It's like, okay, in this looking really granular, did I play this fight correctly or whatever? And then should I even have been there?
And I would say most people struggle though with the macro. They go straight to the micro, like, oh, I could have flashed that or I could have done that. And that's fine. These are fine observations. But it's like, dude, why are you even contesting this dragon? It's like,
it makes no sense.
It makes no sense. You have no ultimate. You know, you could have easily traded it off. These are the questions. These are the tough questions we've got to start asking ourselves.
Yeah, and I think that different kinds of people default to different things as
Yes.
well. Because I sometimes see AD carry specifically focus too much on the macro, and I just want them to fight their way out of situations and learn more about how to play their character. So it can go both ways.
Yep.
All right, my next one's my favorite one. People know that I have a shirt sometimes that I wear on this podcast that says "Get into the details." My water bottle literally says "Get into the details." And
what are the details, Nathan?
What are the details? Okay, well, let's just zoom out for a little bit, Curtis. Why this terminology came into it? Because this was a common response to lots of general questions that I get.
Yeah, it's a retort.
You've got to, it's like a defense mechanism. It's like, let's get into the details because people love to talk about the game in general terms. People default to that. Okay, what do I do?
How do I play Rek'Sai into Graves?
Or what do I do when I get invaded, right? Yeah. You've got to get specific because if you don't get specific in League of Legends, the game gets really confusing really quick. And it's just literally the advice I can give you is not even going to be it's just going to confuse you more. It's just not going to be practical. So you have to get specific. And going back to the end of review saying it's more of a mindset. Same with getting to the details. It's a mindset. Your first default response will be like, I don't understand this. I'm going to figure it out. Like I'm going to get into the details. I'm going to get granular of what I might be missing here.
You know, I really think in order to do this little concept or this slogan, whatever it's called,
campaign slogan.
It's a campaign.
To do it justice, you need to zoom out even further, Nathan. And I think it's a sign. The fact that we even have to say this, it's a sign that League is a very misunderstood game.
Yes.
At a high level, you know, League in the general public is disrespected. It's not viewed through the lens of it's people tend to want to just be like, all right, I just want these big, quote unquote 20%ers that I can plug and play every single game that's going to give me insane results. And if I keep doing these things, that's going to get me all the way up to Diamond and Master, whatever.
People love that.
They love a checklist. It's like the idea of those videos on YouTube is like, just do this.
Exactly right. There's going to be a convenient set of things that you can follow, and that's going to get you results.
Play this champ, play this build.
Yeah, exactly right.
Full clear twice, do dragon base. Like,
it's a narrative or a belief that's propagated through, you know, I guess generic YouTube videos, Reddit, you know, everywhere really, where it's the convenient it's the convenient shortcut. Everyone's looking for a shortcut, and that's kind of what's propagated inside the community. I wouldn't say this is exclusive to League of Legends, many other industries as well, but everyone's looking for a shortcut. And so what this saying basically gets to the meat of is there is no shortcut. There is no generic thing that I can tell you here that's going to solve all your problems. We really have to cover it on a case-by-case basis. So it's a very kind of catchy way of essentially cutting that bullshit narrative, right? And getting aligned. We're going to have to get specific here. So yeah, that's really, I just think, important to understand.
Yeah, and I just want to like maybe devil's advocate and a little bit of empathy for people a little bit here, because I can totally understand where people are coming from when they ask general questions sometimes. And it's, again, that whole idea of very difficult game we're playing.
Yeah.
Like, I get some questions that people might think that they sound really specific and they're really helpful. It's like, when do I move to grubs as an 80 carry, for example? Like, it's just more efficient, believe it or not, to look at a bunch of examples instead of me list all the principles. It's actually like, so it doesn't even have to be the difference between being general and specific. It can just be the difference between understanding it and not understanding it. Like, examples are so mandatory to learning League of Legends. It's that whole concept you talk about like solving 1,000 puzzles, right? You can't just find the principles of puzzle solving and then go to the puzzle tournament and then win the puzzle tournament. You need to prepare. You need to do your puzzles.
It's like the practice tests in schools and exams or whatever it is. You can have the theory, but you got to do the practice tests. Otherwise, it's literally...
I actually used that analogy in a review recently.
Nice.
For that exact topic, Exactly right.
Yeah. No, and I think there's a moment in many people's League journey where they're faced with that reality, or that the reality of, wow, League is actually much harder than I thought. And then you get two responses. Either League's too hard and I don't have the dedication required to actually get results, and that's okay. That's completely fine. There are other games out there for you. Or it's like, wow, that's actually really beautiful, and I'm actually really enjoying solving these puzzles, and I'm not in a rush. I'm happy to, get into the details, as we say, and chip away at it. And I think that many people, you got to have, the sooner that you come to that conclusion, the better.
Yeah. Right.
And that's really what we're here to do. And we're here to streamline that journey and solve those puzzles with you, give you help develop principles, and make that journey fun and satisfying and enjoyable, just straight up enjoyable, because we can help solve problems for you that you wouldn't be able to solve by yourself. Otherwise, it would take you thousands and thousands of games.
And that's what you say about your coaching, Nathan. You're not teaching people the game. You're teaching people how to review, so then go ahead and review it themselves. That's all about the
We're
details.
trying to give people the tools and the knowledge such that they can solve these puzzles by themselves. That's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to equip people with knowledge, very practical knowledge.
The tools to do it themselves and to understand the game themselves.
Isn't there a saying like, don't give a man a fish, teach a man how to fish, or something like that?
Yeah.
If you give a man a fish, he can eat for a day. But if you teach a man how to fish, he can eat for a lifetime.
Yes, exactly. That's what we're trying to do.
Let's start that campaign. That's a campaign slogan.
It's a good campaign slogan.
I'll just have to remember it for you.
We'd have to adjust it to like League of Legends somehow.
Yeah, give a man a Doran's blade and he can kill one minion, but give a man a BF sword and he can win a team fight.
It doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense.
No?
It's funny, but it doesn't make sense. It'd be like, give a man a. I was gonna say something about like a review.
Or like a champion, or teach them how to use their E, and they can, or something.
We're workshopping this live. Is that what's going on?
We shouldn't work this live. I think there's something clever you could do there. If you have an idea in the comments, let us know. I think there's something interesting there.
All right, our next one here. This is more of an in-game one because we got requests from some people. From last episode of our mini-series.
Is this mini-series almost over, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was so wrong.
It's not a mini-series.
Keep asking questions. I want to see the comments flooded with requests.
Dude, we're very comprehensive. We get into the details. We're comprehensive in this podcast.
We can get more comprehensive.
We prepare thoroughly for this podcast, which is absolutely not true if anyone knows just the journey that this podcast has come along. 1-3-1 and 1-4. So this is a mid-game concept.
Lane assignments.
Lane assignments.
Yeah.
So basically a 1-3-1 is, if you look at the map, one person top, 3 people mid, 1 person bot. 1-4 is 1 person in one side lane, could be either top or bot, and 4 people mid, or it could be 4 people on a top lane, and then 1 mid, or whatever. There's different iterations, but those are the main ones. Now, I don't know what your guys' experience is, but 1-3-1 is way more of like a competitive. I don't even know if it's legit and competitive anymore, because it's so risky, because you're spreading your resources too thin. In general, what I tell people to do is 1-4 in solo queue, because it's just more consistent. Well, it's harder to get caught.
Yeah, I would say that just to provide the competitive stuff, you can temporarily 1-3-1 and then shift that into a 4-1. Yeah. That's usually what happens.
But it depends on the amount of engage the enemy have as well, and how far ahead you are.
Can get away with
1-3-1 situationally.
Yeah.
So
I would say that if you're playing a game of League and you want to 1-3-1, you should be the 1. I would say if you're part of the 3, it's more in your favor to just turn it into a 4-1. I'm thinking it from an 80 carry perspective. I never want a 1-3-1 because I don't think it's going to work. But if I'm the one, maybe I can control it, you know?
I will say another thing as well, a little hot tip that I got from AJ. When you're 4-1ing, you don't want to do 4 mid, 1 side. You want to do 1 mid, 4 side.
Yeah, I like that better as well.
1 mid is way better. And
you're so less exposed when you're in the 4.
Exactly right.
Because there's so many flank angles from mid.
I think
so
it's
scary.
such a win con when you're sieging the 4 as a side and the enemy trying to engage on you. I feel like it's so easy to kite back.
It's so
when
easy
you're
to
in
cut
the
back.
side.
And the
Yeah.
person mid, so much harder to get caught mid than it is inside lane.
Yeah.
Because the lane is like kind of shorter.
And you only need like 1 ward.
yeah, you only need like 1
Yeah,
ward.
Yep.
you can easily ward
So
it
it's
up.
very easy. So just a little hot tip there.
Yeah, I guess that's that concept there. All right.
Usually just with Baron, by the way. I
Yeah,
would
this is
say.
with
Yes.
Baron, yeah.
Dude.
If you don't have Baron, then you probably don't
You're-
don't try
you're-
and siege the base.
You're trying to get an advantage somewhere else. You're like controlling areas of the map,
Yeah.
getting picks, getting objectives.
And this is also usually
Shove
when
and
you're
move.
trying to break T3 towers.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
you don't need
Yes.
to do this to break T2s.
Yes.
T2s are broken in different ways.
That's right. Yeah, that we should get more specific there. It is.
Yeah.
It's to start breaking the base.
Correct. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's it. That's all we have for our BBC dictionary. We've covered all the terminology, or at least we think. If we think like I'm missing some, again, let us know in the comments, and we can do a part 3 of the.
What about BBC? What does BBC mean?
BBC means
What does broken by concept mean? I should say.
broken by concepts. We talked about this at the beginning of the Ludwig episode. Basically, the terminology came from. I came up with this terminology because back in season 3, you had movement speed quintessences, and
People are
said,
going, what the fuck is that?
yeah, you can
What
search
is
it up.
that?
What is a quintessence?
So
What
basically,
is it? You know
What the hell is a quintessence?
What is a
Where did that
quintessence?
come from?
so can you believe it? You could choose your stats.
Yeah.
In a game.
Yeah, your
like,
raw
it was
stats.
crazy. Like you could over-index on like people did like full crit and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Remember that 1% crit rune that people would have?
Yes.
That RNG was insane for like Tryndamere and GP and stuff like that. That was auto win the lane because they accidentally crit.
Correct.
Yeah, so basically I said movement speed was broken by concept because I played Udyr and movement speed was really good for me. And then I just started whipping that terminology out for everything. It became a meme in our TeamSpeak server. I would say this is broken by concept. That's broken by concept.
And what he means by broken by concept, to break it down, it's like the sheer existence
Of
of a
it,
thing
yes.
means that it is broken.
Yes.
That's what that.
It's just incredible that this exists.
Yeah.
That's what it really
Like
means.
this podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's broken by concept.
Like 2 AD quints and 1 lifesteal quint. That was the setup for AD carry.
I think it was...
Let's not talk about season 2 runes,
Okay.
guys. No one was even
No one
playing
cares.
this.
Glyphs.
Glyphs.
Glyphs and
Yeah,
that was the
A-
big
A-
one.
Yeah.
Seals.
Seals,
Seals.
glyphs, and marks.
Yeah.
Marks.
Yeah.
You remember that, dude. That's
80 marks,
insane.
armor seals, and MR or attack speed.
Yeah,
glyphs.
that's right. The blue ones.
Yeah.
We're
Good AD
boomers,
carries
dude.
with
We're
where
absolute
drop
boomers.
the MR
The
glyphs
league
and-
boomers.
Charles, if you can remember, I'm going to make it a note.
Yeah.
Put a screenshot of what it
Of
looks like.
what
Yes.
a glyph is.
Screenshot
Yeah.
of runes.
Yeah.
Nice.
Nice.
All right, let's move on to
Our school post?
school.
We could live in the past a bit longer.
We do that too often in this podcast, Charles. All right. So our school post today comes from Lera. The title of this post is Very Inconsistent and Completely Lost. These are my favorite posts, by the way. I love people in the depths.
Rock bottom.
Rock bottom.
It's like in this SpongeBob episode where they go to rock bottom. Instead of bikini bottom, they go to rock bottom.
What was in rock bottom? What was it like?
It was like a bus stop, and there were a bunch of like really fucked looking fish down there. like it was bad. It's a bad place.
Okay, that's good.
People, it's a really popular episode.
Okay, all right, let's get into it. All right, TLDR.
That's ridiculous.
That's good. We're keeping this in. I'm gonna put a picture of rock bottom on the screen.
I want to see. I'm going to watch the episode now. I'm so curious.
I'm crying though. So
Oh god.
hurry up. Read the post. Do you want me to read the post? I'll read the post.
Charles reading the post.
Okay. TLDR. One game I'm super fed, no deaths and carrying. The next game I'm completely useless, dying over and over again. I genuinely don't know why I'm so inconsistent these days. Then they go on. To add some context, I'm an Iron 80 carry playing Misfortune. I used to play Jhin, but I got burned out from one-tricking and decided to introduce Misfortune into my champion pool. I was initially doing well. Even in games that I lost, I tried hard to win, dealt damage, and didn't die too much.
Keep going, Charles. You're doing great.
Generally, I'm pretty good at surviving and valuing my life. A high death count usually isn't my problem. But something happened this week, and I'm starting to look like a reportable player.
Guys, get it
This is
together.
why they're in rock bottom. Okay.
Oh, I'm composing myself. I'm composed.
I'm either playing against people. I'm neither playing against people that are much higher ranked than me, nor am I doing it every game. It happens every other game. The match history literally looks like a zebra or a zebra. I don't understand why. In the games where I lose lane, I can't seem to lose gracefully. Does anyone else have this inconsistency problem, and how would you recommend fixing it? So some games they're looking reportable according to them. Some games they're just playing well. And this is a new phenomenon they're experienced, and they're in Iron playing MF.
Great. I'm gonna still love the fact from you, Charles.
Wait, so Charles, you
Go to my comment because I responded to it.
Yeah,
This one-
you
you had a good
responded.
comment.
I want you
Yeah.
to kick it off here.
Alright,
Yeah.
here we go.
So basically, my contention here is that when people say that they're playing inconsistency,
People, that's such a
yeah. This is why we grabbed this. 'Cause people-
Bit of a buzzword.
People
Buzzword.
want to solve their inconsistency
Yeah.
issues, right?
And I think that the inconsistency is kind of just like not real, right? That no one's inconsistent, especially if you're below like Grandmaster. Like you're not really inconsistent. You're facing different problems. So the way I framed this was, instead of viewing your losses as this game I'm playing bad, you need to view your losses as an indicator that you've done something wrong in the game or something poorly or you've executed badly and you need to go fix that. You're not inconsistent. It's just that every game presents you with new and unique puzzles. And in the wins, you face more puzzles you know how to solve. And in your losses, you face more puzzles you don't know how to solve. So basically I said, yeah, get specific, reflect on why you're dying and losing. It doesn't have to be in depth. Just look over your deaths and try and shine a light on what you're doing. You're not inconsistent. You're just facing different problems in different games.
I love this so. This is actually huge, Charles, because
I felt like Socrates writing this. I
yeah,
felt
dude,
it
this
was
is
such
insane.
It was such a good realization I had. Yeah.
It's actually, dude, I want to make a YouTube video on this
Hmm.
because inconsistency doesn't exist.
No.
I
Inconsistency.
mean, you said for Grandmaster. I think it's just league, just in general.
I would say it's probably until the highest levels of play.
Yeah. Once you really master every concept, then you can start talking about consistency.
Because what inconsistency is like it's like a
Thank you, Charles.
it's like a word that what they really mean is that they what's actually really happening, sorry, is that they're actually winning games that they were always going to win anyway. You know what I mean? So they're saying wins and losses, right? But
Yeah.
they're actually playing at the exact same level of play.
Correct.
Is that in some games that's leading to a win, in some games that's leading to a loss. It has no bearing on the underlying. There's no change in behavior. There's no change in level of play
That's
going
right.
on
It's
here.
just because the game's complex. If you could, to use an analogy, right? If you were a runner and you were running the same track every day, and some days you ran well and some days you ran slow or fast, that's inconsistency.
inconsistency.
But league is like you're running a track, you're like
it's a
bouncing
it's
a ball.
like a
there's
different track every
Too
game.
many variables.
And
Because there's too many variables.
like puzzles. There's just way too many different problems to solve.
League is like has millions of variables going on,
Yeah.
right? So the reality, the way you want to view it is, and this is something really helpful for people to understand, is that imagine that League is made up of like 1,000 concepts you need to understand. Okay, when you're in Iron, you only understand maybe like, let's say, 50 of them.
And not every Iron player understands the same 50. That's really important
Yes,
to acknowledge.
exactly right.
Yeah.
And so your 50 concepts that you understand will allow you to win certain games in Iron, and it means you're going to lose other games in Iron. Your job is to use all of these games as opportunities to learn and learn new concepts and get better at executing upon those concepts.
Yeah.
So imagine each of these concepts have there's a theory component and an execution component. Okay? And then your job is to be like, okay, well, what concepts can I take away from this game and get better at executing upon? And then regardless of win or loss, you're getting learning from these games. And so when you're coaching Iron 80 carries, it's not like some of them are good at trading one game and then bad at trading the next. It's just that the person they were versing maybe didn't understand that concept. You were able to abuse them in this particular
Or
area.
you're good at trading into X champion, but bad
Yes.
into trading into X champion. There's always a reason.
There's always a reason. Exactly
It
right.
really ties into the mental stack as well, right? Some games I'm overwhelmed a little bit, so my trading just becomes really bad because certain matchups, like I'm more scared about the thresh
Yeah,
hook.
or you're
compared to the
unfamiliar with
Jana.
particular champions.
Exactly right. And it's not that you're bad at trading, you're just actually bad at dodging the thresh hook. I think we spoke about this last week a bit, that you can get, the mental stack throws you off.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
The most basic concepts. It throws you off. The most
And that's
basic
why,
games.
by the way, I think, what we saw as a community phenomenon, Mel was a champion just by champ design, threw many, many, many people's mental stack off because of the champ design. It's like, this person can reflect my ability. Like, that's just a thing that people think. You think of typically spell shields, right? Or things that go invulnerable. This is the first time where literally something reflects. So you actually get immediately punished hardcore. So like an Ari throws a charm, you get charmed.
Yeah,
Well,
it's second guess every single time you cast a spell.
exactly. So it's actually the complete flip side. It like completely changed people's mental stack. That's why people didn't like versing Mel. One of the big reasons I think people struggle with Mel. Anyway, my point being, I think Charles' point, you're absolutely spot on. You never had consistency. There was no consistency to be had here.
No.
And so you're just missing concepts. Your job now is to figure out, well, what are the underlying skills that are missing? And this is where you come in, Charles. What skills would you recommend an Iron Eddie carry to develop?
Yeah, I mean, you're playing Misfortune, so I would specifically look at a laning phase, and I would just start honing in on your short trades. Look at your Q usage. How often are you Q bouncing off minions to damage your opponent? How often are you looking for those short auto Q auto trades when the enemy step out of position to proc PTA? I would focus on... I would always start with trading, to be honest with you. That's the foundation of MF, is trading. And after you kind of feel like you're getting some leads with your trades, then you can start looking at how am I converting those leads into high quality resets, and then looking to just naturally develop lane advantages through that. Because that's the bread and butter of MF. You win short trades, you take good bases, you rinse, repeat, you go up CS, happy days.
Yep.
So that's where I would direct my attention. Trading.
And
look at the MF guide. There's an MF guide on Skool for free. So
Yes,
look
and
at the
I actually
trading.
think it's actually very freeing when you start to realize, wow, I actually was never consistent in the first. That must be such a weight lifted off your shoulder, because you're trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist. It's like, why am I losing? It must be because I'm playing differently every game. No, you're actually playing the exact same every game. Like, that's so freeing.
Within a range. Within a range.
Within a range.
Yeah.
So
correct.
really, when I read this title, based on what you guys have said, very inconsistent and completely lost. What it's really saying is I have plateaued.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to get better.
Yes.
100%.
Yes.
That's what the translation
That's what
is.
the translation is. Exactly right.
So
And how do you get better, Nathan? You...
get into the details.
Correct.
So we can flat out inconsistency. We're deleting that terminology from it. You're not inconsistent. Inconsistency does not exist in League of Legends.
Yeah.
Clip it and ship it.
And what's going to happen? People are going to come back and say,
Yes.
But Curtis, what about inconsistency stemming from out of stage 4 issues? Now that
It can be.
that is where consistency. That's the only area where consistency is actually in. We can actually have a discussion about it, because yes, if you're getting 5 hours sleep one day and 9 hours the next day, yes, that will lead to differing levels of performance. That's where consistency comes in.
But you wouldn't be lost if that were the case.
It wouldn't
It's
be
quite,
lost.
Quite easy to identify.
Exactly right. But consistency, in order to be consistent from a stage 4 perspective, that's where process comes into play.
Yes.
Process should solve that problem for you.
Yeah. I think something else which flags consistency, which you guys might have experienced as well, is where someone comes to a review and they say, like, you point something out and they'll say, "Oh, I don't normally do that," or like, "Oh, this is not really like me. Usually I do that well."
That's so common.
That's common as hell, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, people are doing that because they don't understand that other factors are influencing their ability to execute on that skill. So again, it's kind of tied back to consistency. So if you think that, like, yeah, some games you do things well, some games you do things poorly, look closer, I think is a general rule.
You think of a player like Chovy, and you've described him, Curtis, as the most consistent player that you've seen. It's like robotic, but he's just an insane. It's not consistency. That's just like his skill level, like his muscle memory.
Being good.
Yeah. Is that amazing? Is that bad to say?
No, I think it's true. I mean, if you just get so good at everything, then that allows you to multitask.
Like he
right?
can't be inconsistent in a way.
Yeah, no, not really.
You can have off days and on days.
Yeah, off days and
but
on
again,
days.
That's where the stage 4 stuff comes into
Stage
play.
4 stuff.
and again,
yeah.
when he's playing against other people like Zeka who are just insane, then it's just a battle of the 1%ers of 1%ers of 1%ers.
Yeah, well, then but this is not really...
No, I mean, when you're talking about professional
this.
play, like consistency does now come into play,
Yes,
probably, because
yeah.
you want to talk about the concept of form over a long career.
Yes, form is... Yes.
No one should really be thinking about form. No.
No.
We're
Form
learning again.
is only in the discussion when you actually have like a skill set. You know what I
Correct.
mean? Like you actually have a level, like a well-defined
these pro
skill set.
players as well, they intentionally try and peak and trough at the right time of the
yeah.
year,
Yeah.
and like there's no point getting into it. Like it's just not relevant.
All right, mailbag time. Away we go. Welcome back for Nathan's mailbag. Jingle, jingle, jingle song. Alrighty then. Our first question here comes from David. The title of this email is Tilt Q and Bad Post-Game Habits. Recently, I've been putting more effort into climbing because I believe that when I'm giving my full effort and with consistent VOD reviews, I can achieve a much higher rank than my current one, which is Emerald 3. However, I often find myself queuing non-stop after losses because I don't want to end the day with negative LP.
Davo.
During my tilt queues, I catch myself analyzing my teammates and their match history. To combat this, I recently started using a streamer mode and muting chat entirely to disconnect from the idea that my teammates are intentionally throwing or engaging in other negative narratives. Despite these efforts, in a recent 3-game block, I encountered the same top laner twice on my team and once on the enemy team. In the first 2 games, he intentionally fed and was typing in champ select before I muted him, all because I messed up a gank in the first game. In the 3rd game, he banned my main but played normally. Having a series of games where it felt like a specific player was against me really messed with my mental state. Even though I've been using in-game tools to disconnect from these thoughts, it's still tough at times. I was wondering if you have any insight on how to block out the idea of certain players being against you, especially as I climb higher and encounter the same players more frequently. I love the podcast and truly appreciate everything you do.
This is so interesting because I mean we've all dealt with this to some degree. Yeah, there's nothing you can do about it. You just got to focus on the controllables. I mean, how do you feel about this, Nathan? I feel like you're the one who's probably dealt with this the most.
I've experienced this the most. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just go into a very extremely logical mindset where I'm purely just thinking long term, and it's like, okay, this person might ruin these 2 games, but I'm just gonna have a crack and just play my best, and then over time, that person might end up. I might not be in that person's games anymore, right? Because I've improved, and I'm not going to see them all the time. I mean, this is really hard. You've got to be. It's just not being a victim. The victim mentality.
I think it's a choice to be a victim.
Yeah,
It's a choice.
Yeah.
And the way I think everyone. Okay, I want to preface by saying everyone has their own way of dealing with this shit. I don't think there is a cookie cutter way. So I'm just going to speak for me personally, how I deal with my mentally. If someone is intentionally feeding a game because I made a mistake, again, this may sound egotistical, but they're just at such a lower level than I am.
Yeah.
Like they're just a child.
They deserve pity, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. I kind of feel
You've had empathy for them.
Exactly. This is the way my mind works. It goes, number one, I can see why they're angry.
That's
I can
right.
understand from their perspective, based off their limited understanding of the game, why they would view this as...
That's the logical thing that I'm talking about. It's like, okay, that...
I can understand.
That plus their maturity level equals this result.
It's like, would you...
That's the reality.
The mindset is like, would you get angry? It's like you know when you're out and you see like a bunch of like 15-year-old kids... Like just
Here we go.
fucking up some shit in a shopping center with a shopping with a shopping trolley or something. You know, it's like, oh well, I was kind of at that level once. You know, like we all. You know, you get...
Gertis can speak for himself.
As in, like, you gain brain cells as you get older, right? And so the way I view it is this person is just at a different stage of their personal development, their journey. And I'm at a different stage of my journey.
That's right.
And I'm not going to... And, like, I understand they're just not ready. They're not at that same stage. So I'm not going to engage with these people that aren't on my level, right? And so, again, that may sound egotistical, but it's just the reality. If you're raging on the internet, getting angry at other people and flaming and ruining other people's games, you're just a child. That is objectively immature behavior. So then my mindset is like, again, if anything, I kind of feel bad for them. It's like, well, this guy must be going through this shit. This guy's probably not in the right mental state right now. You know, he's not in the right state of mind. And then, so I'm going to do me. I'm very confident in following my process, getting my learnings, moving on to the next game. And then that's it. I'm on my journey. You're on your journey. And this extends through everything. It's like I remember I had this incident on the road, like, it was like 2 months ago, where I was 100% in the right, doing my thing on the road. And this guy just started like beeping the shit out of me, like really, really, really aggressively. And basically, I'm like, oh, I could understand why he would be a bit frustrated, but I know I'm in the right. And he's just honking his horn the whole time, like holding down his horn. I'm like,
Wow.
Okay, yeah, I understand why you're a little bit angry. But I don't get angry. I don't take it personally. It's just like, in a way, it's like you're just at that level, and you must have some pretty shit. You must have some shit going on in your life. You're not in a healthy mindset, and that's why I don't even let my ego get involved in it, because we're not on the same level. Really simply, that's the way I handle it. Okay, so
yeah, you can't get sucked in. I think that's the same in solo queue. Like when this happens to me, and like, yeah, there are certain people that I don't even have to do anything wrong. They'll just like,
Yeah, you don't want to go down to their level.
no, don't
It's
go
like
down to
they
their level.
win.
You actually, it's like the old advice, like maybe your teachers told you in school. If just ignore the person trying to do that weird behavior, because what they're doing is they trying to get a response out of you.
Yes.
That's right.
So the best thing you can do
Be
is
the
double
big-
down.
Yeah.
And even if you mute all for, do whatever you can, right? But literally just pretend they don't exist. It sounds psychotic, but like pretend, like if I have a support, right, who's into me from level 1 and they run top, I'll just go to lane and try to play to the best of my ability.
just exactly right.
You min-max.
You
every
min-max, you do
situation.
the best you can.
I did a live com of this the other day, right, where my support was actually ganking top level 1 and he never came back to lane. So I just made it like a quest. Okay, I'm going to problem solve this game. You know, I'm going to try and gank mid level 2. I'm going to try and take some creative resets. I'm going to try sap XP.
Yeah.
Make it a mini game. Dude.
Yeah.
Try and win against all odds. Like have that mentality that like it's just another like battle.
And the people are going to say, why bother? And the way you want to view it is that it's actually like a mental quest.
Yes.
It's like you versus yourself, and you're growing, you're developing, and they're rotting.
Yeah,
they're going down, you're going up. You're developing stoicism, mental fortitude, emotional regulation. You know, you're being a high quality individual, and they're going lower.
Yes.
So in a way, again, like I that's why I'm framing it in that lens, that you're higher level than them. You're better than these people. That's just the reality. And like we're all in different stages of our journey. That's the way you handle it. And the great thing about this is what I love about it is that Nathan and I especially have been flamed over the years by people, but we look back and it's like, mate, you're still struggling at this rank, and I'm getting better and better and better and better at the game. And it's like people like flaming me. I'm like, mate, I've been challenger for like 10 seasons. You know, and like my point is that like the results show for themselves. We're just different beasts in that sense. So like there's that as well. The results do show in the long run, because though that approach to solo queue, it's not sustainable. It doesn't work in the long run. They eventually get exposed.
Yeah.
The talent will wear off. They will fall off a cliff.
And even taking rank out of the equation, they're just not getting anywhere, like in terms of mental health or in
Yes.
terms of like quality of life.
Yes.
Like they're just not having a crack.
And so this is the way we're dissecting this. You got to find the way you dissect it. That's the way Charles and I and Nathan have our own little ways and mental loopholes of dealing with it. That's it.
All right, moving on here. This one here comes from Jacob from the Top Lane Academy. So this one is dumping 3 blocks.
Whoa.
So we talked about 3 blocks and the importance of it. Sounds like Jacob here. See you later. He does not care about 3-game blocks. So the first line of this in bold is literally thinking about giving up on 3 blocks. I've been listening to your podcast for a couple of years now and have often thought about writing into Nathan's mailbag, but I never felt like I had a good enough reason until now. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Do you think playing 5 to 6 games in one session is too much in my situation? I always take a 5 to 15 minute break in between games. The 3-block system has helped me a lot in preventing tilt queuing when I used to play a lot more. Right now, I have to fight to squeeze in a 3-block session each day. I'd say I'm the definition of a mood player, which is why the 3-block process has been incredibly beneficial for me, but maybe it's time to move away from it. Lately, I find myself in a fortunate yet challenging situation. Work has taken up a lot more of my time, which I'm happy about. However, I still feel the urge to jump into a game now and then. While it might be better for my mental well-being to just play the champ I would like from my champion pool, instead of the 2 champions I've chosen to be my mains right now, because Alois meant it would be extremely difficult to climb with my champion pool of 6 champions combined with my schedule. My competitive nature won't let me play without aiming to climb the ranks.
Agree with Alois.
Yeah. I've also realized that I perform significantly better when I drink energy drinks, probably due to my ADHD. Even though I take medication, I feel like energy drinks give me an extra performance boost, but since they're not exactly healthy, I try to limit my intake. This leads to inconsistent gameplay. Some days I perform exceptionally well, while on others I don't. This inconsistency is frustrating, especially since I'm currently stuck in gold, despite having reached emerald for 3 consecutive splits on 2 accounts. It's affected my mindset to the point where I think my biggest issue right now is lack of respect and patience for my opponents. If they don't make obvious mistakes, I tend to force plays instead of respecting their turns, which messes up my tempo. Too often, I end up being the reason my team loses. Because of this, I'm considering switching to playing 4 days a week with 5 to 6 games per session. This will keep my total game amount the same while allowing me to have an energy drink on my gaming days, ensuring a more consistent performance. This schedule would also fit better into my routine since I often have busy days, but also some days where I can focus on fitness and gaming. From a health perspective, this approach also helps me manage my caffeine intake. I try to avoid caffeine on non-gaming days unless I have a 24-hour shift. I typically work 50 to 60 hours a week, train 5 to 6 times a week, and having a girlfriend there would also like some attention. So having days where I can mentally disconnect from LoL might actually be beneficial. Right now, missing a 3-block session stresses me out because I feel like I'm falling behind, which then forces me to catch up, ultimately lowering my game quality. Sorry for the long message, but as we say, the answer is in the details.
There's a lot there.
Yeah, there's so many factors.
A lot of little things.
Yeah.
So is the issues, my first question is, him talking about not respecting the opponent, like overstaying, all that sort of stuff, is that tied to the amount he's playing, the caffeine? What's going on there?
I can speak to the caffeine a bit. I mean,
you're a caffeine expert, Joel.
Almost said a different word there. I am a caffeine addict to some degree, 100%. No, I need caffeine to play. Like, just generally speaking, I do. I mean, I have the same amount of caffeine every day, though. I just have a routine that I stick to. So if I had caffeine on some days and not on other days, I don't think that would solve the problem. I think that would create a new problem.
Yeah.
So I would recommend consistency with the caffeine intake and just find what works for you. A 6-game block, if you have an energy drink at the start, you're going to crash halfway through that block. So I don't think increasing your block length matches your dependence on caffeine, because you're just going to crash halfway through the block.
Wait, but what happens if you caffeine up again halfway through?
He said 1 drink. So that's at the start
I
of the
just
block.
don't like the whole thing about energy drinks.
No, I mean, I have coffee, right? I have coffee.
Yeah.
I sometimes have a sugar-free energy drink, but like at the end of the day, listen to your body.
Yeah.
With the whole caffeine thing, we're not doctors, but I would recommend doing the same thing every day, regardless of whether you play League or don't. So you kind of have that regulation with your body. That's what works for me anyway.
Exactly. I think you're spot on, Charles, in the sense that he needs some sort of consistency with his process. I feel as though it doesn't matter what your process is, as long as it feels good for you, right?
Yeah.
You got to figure that shit out yourself. We
But
can't.
4 days a week, playing 5-6 games, sure.
It can work. We've seen it work, right? Do I think personally that's the greatest setup? Probably not, because I think having 3 days away from League in a row is like.
It depends if the 4 days are in a row.
Yeah, it depends if it's 4 days in a row. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know that. So you got to figure out your shit there in terms of process and play around with what feels good for you. The one thing I will comment on though, what's really concerning, you've listened to the podcast for 2 years, yet you had a champ of 6 champs in gold. What the fuck's going on?
Yeah.
Get your shit together.
Like that's what I'm saying.
This is like
that's not
League
tied.
101. You could have heard that on the first episode of the podcast, mate. So
that's
I'm
not
sorry to
tied.
call you out like
Yeah.
that, mate. But like you're concerned about inconsistency. Play like 2 champions in gold.
Yeah, do a real process.
Do a real process. Like, yeah, sure. I like that you're thoughtful about your out of game shit. But like, if you're playing 6 different, the fact that you're playing 6 champs and thinking about or worried about not climbing, like, what's going on, mate?
If I wanted to learn mid lane right now from scratch and I tried it learning 6 champions, I would be hard stuck as fuck. Like, there's no way that I could climb doing that. You have to lower it. Like, no matter how talented you're, like, convincing yourself you are, no one can do that.
So what
Not
it sounds
possible.
like to me, he's really struggling with like, you need to simplify your journey. lower your champ ball massively.
Yep.
And what it sounds like he's doing, he's really struggling with emotional regulation. I
Well, he
think
says
as well.
he's a mood player.
He's
he
a mood.
defines himself as a mood
Exactly
player.
right. That's what he's struggling.
What does that mean? What does
I think what it
mood
means
player
is that
mean?
like he gets angry when something happens in a game, and he lets that anger dictate his decisions. Vice versa, he gets pissed and lets his whatever the emotion is, lets that. That's the way I'm reading or interpreting that, right? So what you need to do is you need to really just understand the concepts better. I found like this. Whenever I hear people get angry about things, it shows to me that they don't understand the game or the concept well enough. Something is only frustration in League. The number one source of frustration in Tilton League is not understanding confusion.
Yeah.
Exactly right. So it's like, I remember when I was younger, I would get angry dying to a gank. But now I look at dying to a gank and I'm like,
Makes sense.
that makes sense. I didn't even track the first clear. Heard there. No
It's just
shit.
an indicator something
I
went wrong.
deserve to fucking die. Right? So the reality is that if you're like getting frustrated that you can't kill someone under tower and they're just minimizing, well, look at the root cause of the problem. You mismanaging your waves. Or maybe is that just the way the matchup goes? Your jungler played to the opposite side of the map. Okay. That means you don't know how to maneuver those scenarios good enough. Right? You're getting frustrated when that's just the game. The game is the game. That's a puzzle or a problem that you're unfamiliar with solving. That's the problem. So when you address that and you start to make sense of that, be like, oh, when I can't dive this guy and I can't heavy trade, okay, what do I got to do? How do I maximize my impact in this scenario? Whether it's taking tempo resets, calling for neutral objectives, hovering mid, getting deep vision, whatever the hell it is, understand it better. Get better at solving those puzzles.
Yep. And these losses that you're describing, just again, it's like the answer to the last Skool post. They are just indicators that you need to change your behavior.
Yes.
Don't view them as like, oh, it's because I had 25 milligrams of caffeine less than the previous day, or I played a 5th game in my block. That's fine. That could help. But realistically, something is happening in the video game, in the rift.
And
you can
also
look
as well, defining yourself as a mood player is dangerous.
yeah.
Whatever, like I just hate I am the definition of, right? Like you're defining your identity as a player. It's like, okay, sure, you may struggle with emotional regulation, but let's cut to the chase. Okay, next time let's get specific. Okay, next time you feel frustrated, let's tackle that. Ask high quality questions. You get frustrated because you whatever the XYZ reason. Ask a series of high quality questions and be like, okay, well, what's my job now? What's the win condition? What's my next key spike? What do I got to do now? Where's my jungler? What are we doing with the next neutral? These are high quality questions that can help regulate your emotions and direct your focus in, actually useful areas. And it can help you like move on from those thought traps. So I think that your questions, although they are good, I don't think they're getting to the root cause of your real problems.
I also think like, you go.
I was going to say, it's like he's conflating. He's trying to like pull everything for like the reasons. He's like conflating, like merging things.
Yes.
It's like, I'm a mood player, the ADHD, and then the caffeine thing. But I feel like all of them are sort of isolated issues in a way that could be solved in isolation.
In isolation, yeah, exactly right.
I agree, yeah.
But it's all like at the end of the day, it's like all these reasons is why I'm not climbing.
And you got to like tackle them one by one. It's like
He's actually made it sound insurmountable a little bit, Yeah.
It's like tackle them one by one. Get your process sorted, get your caffeine take sorted, get your champ pool sorted, identify what is specifically frustrating you in game and tackle those problems. Work on your emotional regulation in game by asking high quality questions. Like dissect it one by one by one by one.
And then we can maybe talk about the 3-block process.
Exactly right.
All right. Our last question here we'll do. This one here comes from James from Canada. Canadian. The title of his email is Our Friend Cannot Take Criticism During Review. Hello guys, I'm a fairly new listener, around 6 months, and I'm learning more than I ever thought possible from this podcast. I have a group of friends who also play League as a team. These guys are my core group of friends, and we do much more than play League together. Although it is a shared passion, we have a specific friend who will never take any responsibility in-game or during review. Everything is never his fault. We are always the problem, and he has an excuse for every bad play or inaction. He believes that he's the best player and everyone should adhere to his plays and calls at all times. He rarely plays ranked, ever. Granted, so do most of us, and was Iron 1 last season.
Mate.
We have moved him from support to the jungle as he was doing nothing as the support, like sitting, like sitting back in the,
He's
like,
doing nothing. Let's put him in the jungle.
like, yeah, like sitting back in the bush and like,
He's been relegated to farming camps.
and would rarely ever utilize room timers. He likes to play ganking jungles like Vi, J4, and Amumu, but only full clears and ganks when a fighter's already broken out and he happens to be in the area. How do we deal with someone who is a friend outside of the game but refuses to take any criticism or form of responsibility? We're all passionate and strive to improve, but he is taking a toll on our mental states in-game and it's spilling out of game.
Oh my god. This is a can of worms. I think like these guys aren't really trying to improve.
No, they haven't a PS.
Yeah, they're just sitting there playing their ranked fives. There's no if there's no solo queue, there's no improvement. He said that one little bit in brackets was actually the most important part of the whole email, which says, "Granted, so do most of us," meaning none of them really play ranked.
Yeah.
So yeah, that you guys are all going to have really weird viewpoints about what the game is.
Nathan has said something that I think is hyper relevant here many times, which is you got to lead by example.
Yeah.
So the only way you're going to change your friend's behavior is by going to solo queue, fucking shit up, getting a high rank, and being like, "Look, mate, you're in Iron 1 or unranked. I'm in gold or platinum or emerald. Just you're not remotely near my level.
Yeah.
Just this is how it is."
You don't have to say that. That will look.
Exactly.
He could see it.
Exactly right. You're going to lead by example naturally. And as your game understanding gets better, you can really logically dissect plays. It's like, okay, this is why this is a bad gank. Blah, 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 blah. This is why we shouldn't play for this 2v2. Blah, 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 blah. And it's League is a very logical game. And once you understand the variables, it gets very easy. So right now, there's actually nothing you could probably do.
Because you have no authority. I
Because you have no authority.
don't know what rank he is,
It's
but he says
very-
he doesn't play rank, so I assume he doesn't really have a rank.
It's borderline impossible to change someone's behavior
No.
without actually showing that you're more competent.
Yeah, it's like the blind leading the blind a little bit.
Exactly right. And he's probably aware of that. He's probably thinking, well, these guys don't know what the hell they're doing. Why should they tell me what to do? You know, that's probably, I'm assuming that would be kind of his mindset, right? So
Yeah.
that's the advice that Nathan's always given. And I think that's a really practical way. The only other way you would do it is you would find examples or content that explained a particular concept from someone who's in a position of authority. So there's a video out there that's like, explain the thing that you were trying to get across, then link it, right? It's like, if it's a high level coach or a challenger player doing it or talking about it, then there's no really refuting it. Lastly, you can engage in the shit sandwich technique. We say, hey buddy, you did a great job picking a Mumu and Champ Select.
Yeah. Good clear.
You did a great clear. But this fight here, we feel like you rushed. You should have actually held your arm, waited for us to get closer. But also, overall though, we think you played pretty well. Right? Just do a bit of a shit sandwich like that.
It's like you're farming your camps, you're really strong, it's good, but we need you in these sort of situations. You need to start skipping your camps here or whatever. And then it's like, I think if you can get to this level, you can improve a lot.
Yeah, so it's like a shit sandwich.
Yeah.
Positive, negative, positive.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that'll work. I just think that like this whole 5v5 thing, it's like when you guys play as a team, that's not the time to improve. That's the time to express your level.
That's
of
right.
play.
That's your level.
You guys need to go improve individually on your own, learn how to play your roles, and then come together and express that.
Lead
as a
by
five.
example.
Exactly right. Yeah, I think reviewing, like, I can't imagine like a bigger trap to get into than 5 Iron Bronze players sitting on a Discord call trying to problem solve a team game of League. Like, that's just not gonna. No one's gonna get better at the game themselves. You guys might get aligned, and that's fine, but you're not gonna get better at the game doing that. And that's no disrespect. It's just because that's just how the game is.
You can also get aligned on the wrong play.
Exactly right. You could be making it worse, and probably are. So yeah, again, no disrespect. That's just the nature of the game.
All right, so good timing or bad timing. Our camera has just died, but Charles will have. You know what, Charles? Put the rock bottom on the screen.
Bottom on the screen. Yes, yes, dude. I had the same thought. That's
to
good.
close out this episode. So good work, guys. Let's keep on improving. 3-block process, which has been clearly defined after today's episode. We'll see you guys next week.